healthcare, food, living spaces, transportation, cities, enterprises, energy, and digital trust. We believe technology is forging a brighter future.
Some more people are coming in here. Yeah. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Building Climate Resilient Digital Nations session. I'm Rahul Shah, and I lead GSMA's Mobile for Development team. M4D is singularly positioned at the intersection of the mobile ecosystem and the development sector. Yeah. We have impacted so far 100 million lives, actually more. And this is by stimulating digital innovation and to deliver both sustainable business as well as large-scale socio-economic impact. We focus on 4 themes: digital inclusion, financial inclusion, humanitarian response, and resilience to climate change. Let's take a step back and see why mobile is central to climate resilience. The mobile industry, as you know, connects billions of people. The number today is 3.5, but it's growing very rapidly. And it continues to advance this by connecting more people. And mobile phones have become the primary way for people to actually access the internet, especially in low and middle income countries. These are mobile first economies or mobile only economies. And this is what is driving economic growth in these countries. However, on the other hand, we know that we are in a time where climate pressure is increasing continuously through shocks and stresses on our environment. And this impacts the most vulnerable the highest. So what can we do? Is mobile a way to actually help us with this to adapt to the changes, as well as to mitigate or reduce our footprints? Now, by leveraging digital assets, we have the opportunity to address challenges spanning climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. Especially, we expect that we will be able to reduce lower greenhouse gas emissions by about 15%. Thus, mobile technology has the reach to transform lives and is uniquely positioned to provide and enable tools that allow societies to adapt and become more resilient. So today we'll be hearing from thought leaders, industry practitioners, and project implementers who contribute to the twin transition to digital and climate. We will hear both about opportunities and challenges and in mobile digital technologies, as well as public-private sector collaboration, especially on sustainable energy, waste management, and natural resource management. So it is my honor here to invite His Excellency Bapak Suryo Pratomo, Ambassador of Indonesia for Singapore, to deliver his opening remarks. Thank you, Your Excellency, for taking time from an extremely busy schedule to join us today.
So thank you, Raul. A very good day to all of you, and I hope you are all in a good health. It is indeed a real delight for me to be here at the opening of the GSMA APAC 360 Program Summit. Having more than 17,000 islands with over 81,000 kilometers of coastline, a population of more than 270 million, and extremely varied geography, topography, and climate, ranging from sea and coastal system to peat swamp and mountain forests, are indeed abundant blessing to Indonesia. However, climate change has caused this blessing to become threat too. Some of our islands now maybe have already disappeared because rise of sea level. It's affect not only our environment, development of economy and prosperity, but also the very existence of our mankind. For the past few decades, climate change effects such as natural disasters are already harshly felt in Indonesia. The climate change has also caused economic damage to Indonesia. Distinguished guest participants, ladies and gentlemen, while the far-reaching impact and effect of the climate change in Indonesia are real pressing, Indonesia's commitment and effort to tackle climate change are very real too. Indonesia has adopted a significant number of policies and measures within our capacity to respond to the challenge from climate change. Among others, we demonstrate our commitment to tackle climate change by ratifying the Paris Agreement in April 2016 through Release Law number 16 of 2016. The nationally determined contributions are in place to reduce emission by 29% domestically and by further 41% with international support by 2030. We are now transforming our economy into green economy to encourage economic growth and improve social welfare while maintaining environment quality. Implementing low carbon and climate resilience is one of the strategies for transition to a green economy and sustainable development. On the systemic shift toward a just climate neutral, nationally, Indonesia has made a strong commitment to restore degraded land by launching forestry and other land use net sink 2030. As we take climate change very seriously, we have obtained noticeable success. The deforestation rate has fallen significantly, the lowest in last 20 years. Forest fire also fell by 82% in 2020. The rehabilitation of mangrove forests have been started, covering an area of 600,000 hectares by 2024, the largest in the world. We also maintaining and rehabilitate coral reef. We have the biggest country that with the coral reef. 3 million critical land have been rehabilitated between 2010 and 2019. The sector, which originally contributes 60% of Indonesia emission, will achieve a carbon net sink by 2030. In the energy sector, we are also moving forward with the development of the electric car ecosystem, construction of the largest solar panel in Southeast Asia, utilization of new and renewable energy, including biofuel, and the development of clean energy-based industry, including the development of the world's largest green industrial area in North Kalimantan. Distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia is one of the countries that have large area of green land and the potential of reforestation. We are one of the countries with large sea that have the potential to contribute carbon. We have action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. By our national action by itself, it's not enough. Climate change needs to be confronted, addressed, and resolved as a collective. As an African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Collective action and global partnership are imperative if we are to tackle global environment challenges. It is necessary to carry out intensive collaboration and communication between various stakeholders to ensure that the transition process toward a green economy can be carried out properly. Immediate and real support to Indonesia will be able to make Indonesia contribute more quickly to the world net zero emission. Technology development and transfer are one of importance. Distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, technology development and transfer are a must in building a nation adaptation and resilient against the climate change impact. These two are repeatedly emphasized in the report of last Glasgow Climate Pact. Digital technology is the key driver. With the vast island geography that Indonesia has, digital technology offers the single greatest opportunity for reaching far-flung island and rural population. The application of digital technology is profoundly transforming the landscape in Indonesia economy and leading to the emergence of digital economy. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, mobile technology has given birth to many pandemic-resilient local businesses. Tech startups, in particular, were born to drive innovative solutions that can generate new sources of economic growth and jobs for millions of people. Digital economy has therefore become a key factor that enables our communities to emerge stronger, to respond to ever-changing situations, including climate change, and uncover new opportunities. Mobile technology in particular should be encouraged to outreach community at large, enhance knowledge sharing on what and how to combat the climate change. I'm very happy that in Indonesia, some initiatives have already appeared and give some result. Some startup has contributed to upscaling our people, such as Aruna, who helps fishermen in Indonesia, Cactus, who helped Jakarta City to manage their waste. In this regard, I would like to appreciate the works of the GSMA Mobile Innovation Hub team in Indonesia that has been in close cooperation with many stakeholders in the country to use digital technology as a relevant tool to address climate change and its impact to the communities. I welcome to the GSMA report on the role of digital technologies in addressing the climate change published last year. I agree on the potential increasing demand for digital and mobile-enabled solutions for greener solutions and addressing climate change in 7 particular themes set out in the report. They are energy, transport, nature, agriculture, water, waste management, and disaster preparedness, which are all Indonesia top interest for now and in the coming years. Distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, what we are addressing today requires a comprehensive approach. Therefore, I wish to see that this GSMA APAC 360 Program Summit will result fruitful insight and concrete strategy in addressing the climate change challenges through digital technology. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your excellent remarks on how digital solutions can help climate change challenges in India, in Indonesia. It's sorry, but yeah, that just rolls off the tongue naturally. It's really, I mean, what was really important to hear is the efforts that Indonesia is already making, and there are plans. There's obviously you brought up two things that we will talk about more in the panel discussions as well. That is collaboration and innovation. But before we do that, before we go to the panels, let me invite Asri. So Asri Hassan Sabri is the Group Chief Corporate Officer of Axiata Group, and he will deliver his keynote address on the group's initiatives to advance net zero in our region.
Thank you, Rahul. And good morning, all. First and foremost, I just want to thank GSMA for the honor of for giving us the honor to present our views on managing our net zero, as well as helping to build climate resilient digital nations as part of the overall theme of what we have for M360 today. I think first and foremost, like most of our peers that we have here in the mobile network operators, the subject of climate management has become mainstream in our business. And this is something that we can't avoid of not doing anymore moving forward, right? So I'll spend about 10 minutes going through my deck, and I will have a short video at the end of my presentation. I just want to start off with this statement that was made by United Nations, I think about sometime last year, that climate action is not a budget buster, nor is it an economy wrecker. So we have this idea that when we go green, it's going to cost the economy. It does not. And I think it's proven that when you do this, it adds a positive net effect to the economy as a whole, and it does add jobs. And this is, again, talking about economic gain of 26 trillion through to 2030 compared to business as usual. And this is, again, likely to be a conservative estimate. So that's, it is certainly a start for us. If you plan this well, with proper planning and proper budgeting, you will be able to realize immediate gains by going green. And we've seen this in some countries already. Okay, just a quick overview of who we are. I mean, I've got fellow peers in the room here today. But certainly, I think just to represent where we are actually in 11 countries. And we have businesses from running mobile operator network business, digital business, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. I think what's interesting for us is the fact that if you look at our operation, we are in 11 countries in emerging markets. And if you talk about these markets that we're in, and if you talk about sustainability and climate management, some are more mature than others. But certainly one thing for sure is that we are way behind the developed nations in the US or even in Europe, right? But I guess this is where I've got some friends here from the industry who are in countries like Myanmar, for instance. And we can see, we can draw some parallel of what happened in our own industry, whereby if you don't have a legacy infrastructure, you could actually leapfrog by using new technologies ahead. And similarly here, this is what we can see in some of these countries where you don't have a mature set of legacy infrastructure to talk about sustainable energy or climate management. You can actually leapfrog that by using digitization and automation in some of the things that we do. So again, these are, while we look at it as a challenge, I look at it as an opportunity to actually address some of this green economy into some of these countries that we operate in. All right. Just a quick one to introduce our net zero carbon roadmap that we've just introduced last quarter. This roadmap is to help Axiata contribute towards this region's climate action, as well as in helping us plan our own journey to net zero. We've got three-pronged objectives here. Objective 1 and 2 is to accelerate our decarbonization of our network operations, and the second one is to accelerate the transformation of our value chain. And the third objective is to deliver an inclusive climate agenda. So 1 and 2 is really talking about reducing our own emission, and this is where we talk about by using digitization and automation, employing technologies such as IoT, AI, what have you, in reducing our own climate emission as well. And the third one is talking about how can we actually deliver this, some of the support we have to our customers and the countries that we operate in. One of the things that we've done here is that we've signed, sorry, did I press something? Oh, I did not press anything. That's not me. Okay, all right, not me. So where was I? Yeah, we spoke of the fact that, when we talk about putting some measures and KPIs towards what we want to do for Objective 1 and 2, we have subscribed to some standards, if you like, and this is a standard that was set by CDP and WRI on what we call SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiative, which we are proud to say that we've signed off on this commitment a couple of quarters ago. And certainly, I think by having a science-based approach, this is something what we want to do to make sure that we do this in a meaningful way and something that can be measured. Yeah. So that's what we do as far as our roadmap is concerned. And of course, this ties up to our overall sustainability roadmap, what we plan to do over the next couple of years. Okay, this is talking about this particular slide. A 2021 report that was co-authored by the World Economic Forum and PwC states that the significant role that digitalization technology can play in improving the adoption of green technology. It talks about the fact that how these digital technologies can help to directly reduce 4% in global emissions by 2030, mainly through automation and process improvements, particularly in the industrial, manufacturing and agricultural segments. Not just emissions, but also focus on sustainable economic development programs. I think this point is just that I wanted to make as far as my peers and myself, the companies that we are in looking at mobile operations network. This is where we are able to actually provide the ability for companies and for our customers to go green by using technologies such as IoT, blockchain, other form of digitization, if you like, to help us adopt this green economy in a much more meaningful way. Yeah? So that's where we stand, and I think we are in a good state as far as this industry is concerned to help countries move in this direction. I've got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to speed up. So these are just some examples of what we've done across the footprint that we're in. Sri Lanka, for instance, we've introduced what we call smart farming. This was introduced a couple of years ago. This talks about leveraging innovation and technology towards addressing food security and supply. What's important here is that the word affordability. We are doing it in a way that is affordable, and especially for countries like Sri Lanka today. What we have in this is really helping them out in the circumstance that you're in today. Indonesia, for instance, Ambassador was talking about some of the stuff that was happening in Indonesia, especially with farming and whatnot. What we've introduced in Indonesia is Laut Nusantara. I have some colleagues from Excel here that we've introduced this application that was in partnership with the Marine Research and Observation of Indonesia. We've implemented this across all the islands. I think Ambassador was talking about the thousands of islands in Indonesia. But certainly this has helped 250,000 fishermen across 100-odd villages in identifying good fishing spots, weather conditions, and so on and so forth. That helps. Just a simple app can actually make a big difference to this. And you have flood monitoring system for Excel, and for instance, in EDOTCO, our tower infrastructure company, we've introduced a national greenhouse gas monitoring system together with the Malaysian Meteorological Department. And this is something that we have in operation some time back. Last but not least, this is talking about overcoming net zero challenges through stakeholder collaboration. We're going to have all kinds of issues in trying to address this move towards green economy. You're going to have, but in all the challenges, you do have these opportunities talking about public-private partnership, talking about corporate-driven agenda among our peers, and so on and so forth. Obviously, there remains challenges, that's what we see, talking about from a positive standpoint and whatnot. But this is where one thing that we should do from just our industry is talking about cross-collaboration industry. We need to talk to the dirtier industry, if you like, the mining and so on and so forth, just to make sure that the policy we advocate within the countries we work in can be meaningful towards the attainment of green economy. I'm just going to close up with a short video that shows what we do with our journey for net zero. And with that, I thank you.
On to the discussion phase of this session. So let me invite the panelists now and we'll be discussing. So the reason we're focusing so much on Indonesia is because we have a project there, which I think you will learn about. I mean, just in case you're curious as to why Indonesia figures so prominently in our agenda today, and we'll be talking about that today. Yeah. So first, let me invite Feryandi Mirza, head of Last Mile and Backhaul Networks at Bakti, Republic of Indonesia. Bakti is an agency under the Ministry of Communications and Informatics. Daniel Schroeder, lead advisor of digital transformation in Indonesia, GIZ. You may know that GIZ has been working in the country for since about 1975. Not that Daniel's been there, it wasn't that long. And it's also one of the global development partners for the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is BMZ. And Dilip Tilakratne, Market Engagement Director for the Mobile Innovation Hub and Climate Tech at the GSMA. I think we've reversed the order, but that's okay. Yeah? Oh, yeah. I have been. It really is me. Okay. So before we start the panel discussion, can we share a short video, a different one? This is a GSMA video, and this is essentially highlighting findings of the state of the mobile-enabled climate technology in Indonesia. And this will set the context of our discussion. So can we have the video, please?
Indonesia is home to 270 million people and is the 8th most significant emitter of global greenhouse gases. The largest contributors to this are forest and other land use, energy, and waste sectors. The country is also vulnerable to flooding, droughts, and rising sea levels. This is intensified by most of the country's dense population living in hazard-prone areas. To address this climate impact, Indonesia aims to reduce emissions by 29% unconditionally and 41% conditionally by 2030, while increasing its capacity to adapt and to build climate resilience. With funding from the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the GSMA has conducted an in-depth study exploring the opportunities for mobile-enabled solutions to assist Indonesia's climate mitigation and adaptation efforts, leveraging the country's almost 201 million internet users. Through our research, we identified 47 use cases where mobile-enabled climate technology solutions are already in use. 3 distinct barriers were seen to slow down the adoption of mobile solutions in climate projects. 1. Key locations lack connectivity and infrastructure to roll out existing solutions. 2. Complex social, political, and ecological processes hinder collaboration, innovation, and effective policy implementation. 3. A lack of understanding the benefits discourages end users from behavioral change required to implement solutions. To address these barriers, the GSMA is proposing an ecosystem approach that centers mobile-enabled solutions as an integral part of achieving the country's climate goals. We recommend 1. Investing in mobile-enabled connectivity and digital literacy to reach the most rural areas, coupling it with climate tech innovations. 2. Building trust between stakeholders operating in the same ecosystem, creating forums to share learnings, and developing science-based narratives to increase coordination. 3. Build the capacity of public sector and communities as project implementers to optimize the use of mobile-enabled digital technology. 4. Use a human-centered approach to design climate technology, ensuring the value proposition is clear to the end users. Find out more about how mobile-enabled technology can assist Indonesia achieve its climate goals by accessing the full report on our website.
Okay, thank you for that. So this is actually a preview of our report, which will be published later. So firstly, I'd like to ask Dulip, who's led the creation of this report. Can you share a bit more? Can you highlight why you've done this report and what is the importance of this report in the climate tech landscape of Indonesia?
Sure. Thanks, Rahul. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming and thanks for having me here as well. Very quickly to set context, I think we heard from the ambassador about the importance of addressing the climate challenges for Indonesia and also using digital technology, right? So from GSMA Mobile Innovation Hub side, which is a new project that we are working alongside Daniel and the GIZ, recently, we wanted to understand what's the status, or what's the state of using digital tech for climate solutions in the country at the moment, and what needs to change. So that's setting kind of the context to understand, okay, how much work should we do, what can we learn, and how can we then scale in the region, right? So those were the 3 things we wanted to understand. So there are promising signs, as you can see. There are already projects where on the ground being implemented of digital tech being used for climate. But in doing that, we also wanted to understand, like, for a country like Indonesia, 47 seems to be a smaller number, right? So we can do more, right? So how can we do more? So we wanted to see what barriers are there. So we spoke to stakeholders, project implementers, to understand, okay, what needs to improve? What can we change? And the report highlights these findings on where we need to change and what can we do more and that sort of thing. So I feel it'll be one of the first reports that maps climate and digital in Indonesia, and it's been supported by all mobile operators. So we have operator colleagues here. So very happy to hear from them as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Dulip. And you mentioned that we're working with the DTC, Digital Transformation Center. So Daniel, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. And can you tell us a bit more about what is a DTC? What's the operating model? How do you fund it? And maybe you can use Indonesia as an example for this.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. Thanks for having me. Oh, also not me. Can we fix the sound? It sounds like a submarine in there. Yeah, so DTCs is a global initiative. It's funded and by the BMZ, yeah, also by the Federal Ministry for economic development and okay, that's okay. And the goal is to basically tie together, or a major role is to tie together the already existing digital initiatives in the fields of activity that the GIZ already has. So GIZ is in Indonesia for 40 years now, and is mainly active in the fields of renewable energy, climate resilience, national resource management, and all of these activities already have digital approaches. And the DTC is designed to be a melting pot to create a coherent strategy and activity to support this. Yeah, I guess that's the operating model. Active in many countries, and Indonesia is a very new one. Yeah, so we started in January, March this year, so very fresh. Yeah.
Great. So take that a bit further. Can you share an example project that you are supporting?
I guess my favorite example that we are going to support is one that is right now in conception phase. It's a project that is focusing on using artificial intelligence to analyze high carbon stock areas. It's mainly in artificial intelligence, models that have been trained to identify areas that are high potential carbon sinks, or could be high potential carbon sinks. So to not get them deforested, or to reforest those, and to help the entities that are planning these areas. And that's coming up, and we're working on that, and that's the one I'm most excited about right now, where it's very obvious that you have digital technologies and climate tech working together.
That's very interesting. Look forward to the implementation of that project. Let me turn to Andy. He's allowed me to say and call him Andy. So, what's the mission of Bhakti, and how does your work link to climate?
Okay. Thank you, Rahul. So, Bhakti is, like you have mentioned earlier, that Bhakti is a government agency, and mainly our mission is to bridge the Indonesia digital divide, actually. So, in relation with the climate change, you know that the areas where Bhakti working at is, it's still hard to get the resources, in particular for the electricity. So in order to implement our program, we always consider to implement the program that promote the environmental sustainability, and also having expectation that we hope also have impact to the increase of adaptability, awareness, and resiliency of the climate change.
Thank you. So, we heard from His Excellency, about 17,000 islands, and obviously in such a complex geography, last mile connectivity becomes a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And so, how are you extending connectivity, coverage, I should say? How are you extending coverage to these remote settings, and then how are you balancing connectivity, digital inclusion versus climate change on the other side?
Yeah. So, yeah, you know that Indonesia is very huge, the area. So we face enormous challenge to develop the infrastructure there in Indonesia. From the difficulty of transportations, for example, logistic, not to mention the hard access because of the geographical conditions, in particular in Papua, and also unpredictable climate in Papua as well. So yes, this is challenge for us to build the infrastructure for the connectivity. But mainly it's not only the infrastructure development, but also how to empower people who are living around infrastructure that we have built. So we have actually execute two programs in Bhakti. First is the infrastructure development, but also the development of digital ecosystem. We have collaborated with many partners and to empower the people living in areas where we have built the infrastructure there. So there are two objectives, alongside of the infrastructure development, but we also empower the people who are living in around the infrastructure that we have built.
Okay, that's very important, because when we at the GSMA we look at digital inclusion, we talk about the coverage gap, which is not having access to a mobile internet signal, and the usage gap, which is people having access to the mobile internet signal but not using the mobile internet. I think we'll come back to that point, the second point, because I think that's a massive gap. People, the conversation typically has been, oh, build the sites and you'll have you'll solve all the challenges, but it doesn't work like that. So we'll come back to that a little bit towards the end. But let me go back to Dulip here and ask Dulip, can you share some examples of the telecommunication industry providing leadership to accelerate the achievement of climate goals?
Sure. Thanks for the question, and I would also ask you to do something. So stop me if I go too much into the science and keep away from practicality. Okay.
We'll see if the heads start to.
Yeah. So no, when it comes to climate challenges, we have to look at two aspects, right? So the first aspect of looking at climate mitigation, and the second aspect of looking at climate adaptation and resilience. So these are like two buckets of things. First of all, we know that climate change is going to be a major emergency for the world at the moment. So we have to stop climate change from happening further. So we have to address the source, that is on climate mitigation side. And you heard from Asri like how they're approaching as a mobile operator or a group to look at net zero or looking at a target that's long away. It might be a slow journey, and we kind of map it out, look at science-based targets, address them step by step or year by year, break it into smaller chunks of what we do, avoiding the current emissions and looking at adding more greener energy and reaching net zero eventually, right? So that's one side of things. The other side is to look at adaptation and resilience, right? So we can't help it. Climate change is happening and we are feeling it, right? Every country in the world, you see some sort of climate hazard or stress affecting us daily, regularly. If you know, when you were younger, you used to study monsoon seasons, right? Where you in Sri Lanka used to say May to September is one monsoon, the other monsoon October to February. It happens. Now you don't know. It rains, it doesn't rain, right? So it's eventually happening around us. So we can't stop it. We have to face it, and we have to make the vulnerable communities more resilient and ready for these climate changes. So all the infrastructure you put up needs support from operators, where we use technology that now makes communities more ready, right? So you will hear from Ericsson soon today how they are using AI and IoT devices to make mangroves more resilient, right? So similarly, mobile operators are working with natural resource management. We heard on Excel initiative on how to make fish more sustainable on fish farming side. So fishermen are able to use their resources more sustainably, right? So looking at that side. And thirdly, we also have to look at what change needs to happen on community side and how can operators contribute there. So that is the larger piece that I leave for future, and where this kind of initiatives we are talking about would largely face. Hope I didn't go too much into science.
No, I think that was quite understandable. But can you talk a little bit about the innovation fund of the GSMA as well? I mean, innovation. The ambassador also brought that up. And this question, I think, follow on. I'm going to go to Daniel as well. But just sure. Maybe you can introduce the role of innovation here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so happy that Harsha is here as well. So he was one of the fund panelists. So after the session, please have a word with Harsha as well, and I'm sure he'll contribute to the discussion. At COP26 last year, we opened a call for innovators to startups to say, if you have any initiative that provides resilience to climate, where you use digital tech and supports a vulnerable community for them to apply. So we had, interestingly, more than 500 applications across the world coming through. It was a very interesting exercise to find the best ones, most innovative ones, most collaborative ones, and out of them, we are at the last step where we have now identified the potential grantees, and we are in the process of contracting them, and you'll hear soon, very soon, about which grantees would be supported. So these are initiatives where tech startups are providing these innovations that also come in the interplay between climate challenges, using digital technology.
Thank you. And Daniel, in your view, right, how important are these local startups to, and do you have plans to work with them on climate challenges?
Yes, absolutely. I think they're essential. Look, I mean, we heard it in the beginning. All this activity is about partnerships. It's about innovation. It's about SMEs, and I would consider startups to be SMEs at some point in time. I mean, we can have this discussion later on. When is a startup and when it becomes an SME? But yeah, like I said in the beginning, we're trying to make a holistic, take a holistic approach to all of this, and that includes different levels of the ecosystem. So capacity building is one part, policy advice is one part, and getting the broader public educated in digital literacy to have this pipeline of innovators feed into the startups. So yes, very much we are doing activities there. I mean, you later have a conversation with Tarek, and he's doing a similar thing where we have an activity that supports startups that are specifically in the field of climate tech and green tech actively, because these startups need a very specific kind of support. It's not just a business model that they need, it's also technology support, because most of them are technology startups and not just a SaaS company. They go beyond that. Many have hardware. So yeah, we're very much looking into working with them.
Thanks. I mean, earlier today, in one of the keynotes, we heard from the Minister of State in Singapore about CTO as a service. I thought that was a really interesting model.
It was super amazing.
Yeah.
I heard there was like, okay, taking notes now. Let's approach this.
Yeah.
It's super interesting how embedded the government of Singapore is in this ecosystem. And I mean, you see it all around. If you go to Southeast Asia and you go to Southeast Asia and you go to Singapore, yeah, it's same but different. But it's at a state, the ecosystem is at a state which is just amazing. And I think there's a lot to be learned. And I like the idea of CTO as a services.
Yeah.
I would like to know about the financing model of it, but
yeah, that's what it all boils down to. Okay, thanks for that, Daniel. I think I'll just turn to Andy a little bit. Go back to that, conversation about coverage gap, usage gap, right? So we've seen that the uptake, like you take a mobile signal to a community, but that doesn't mean they're going to take or you take a new app to a community, which may be very relevant to them, but they still don't, necessarily take it. What is the role of Bhakti? Like, how are you trying to address the adoption challenge?
Okay, so like I have mentioned earlier that beside the infrastructure development, Bhakti also playing a role on the collaborators to empower the people living around the infrastructure that we have built. So currently, Bhakti have been partnering with a wide range of partners actually across stakeholders, maybe more than 40 or 50 partners currently, from government agencies to telco operators, including startups as well, and the NGOs and other stakeholders. So the role of Bhakti is as the collaborators, and also what we call it, to encourage all the stakeholders to empower the people that are living in remote areas. Yeah.
Mm.
So because the digital literacy is one of the keys that of the successful connectivity. I mean, not only in terms of connectivity, but meaningful connectivity. So we can utilize the infrastructure a bit more optimal.
Thank you. So I got into that term digital literacy. Is there a specific initiative that you've undertaken to improve digital literacy?
Yes, actually, we have been working on that activities. Yeah, we have partnering with many partners actually, including the startups. Even 2 or 3 years back, we have like incubators programs. Yeah, we engage with many startups, and maybe 2 or 3 of them are now become established. Yeah? So we have now cooperation with them to give the what you call it, the training of the people in remote areas and other activities that hopefully can increase the capacity and awareness of the people who are living in the remote areas.
That's great, thank you. Dulip, back to you. How do you think the mobile industry can build confidence around mobile-enabled solutions?
Sure. I think, yeah. So on the topic of confidence and solutions, I feel that it is there for mobile solutions that people have been using, but it is not yet there for climate solutions that we are going to introduce, right? I'll get an example to explain this, right? So for example, you would have, we are currently, at the moment as I speak, our team in Indonesia are exploring a project with shrimp farmers in North Kalimantan, right? So this is a very remote area where is the highest mangrove growth in Indonesia, and with the mangroves they have these shrimp farms, right? So we are trying to see if we can use IoT technology, right, to support these shrimp farmers to be more sustainable, right? And you would have these farmers working on a very traditional basis, right? They would put their, what they call brush piles, you might have heard, like they put all the branches in one area, and then the shrimp would be attracted there. They would then harvest on that. So whenever the harvest is not enough, they move to another area, then another area. It continues happening, right? And this is their traditional way of farming, right? And for example, if you try to go and say, look here, we put this IoT device, and this will give you measurement on the nutrition there, the aeration there, so that would help you. If the aeration is not enough, you can do something, increase aeration, you can be in the same area. The farmers usually would be very reluctant to accept and change behavior. So you have to have a proven case, right? Somewhere you have to have people who are already committed, understands this, to come to them and talk to them. So it's a process where the mobile operator can provide the technology, but the behavior change doesn't come with that, right? So it is same for that, it is same for using energy solutions, it is same for using any lifestyle solution that also have a sustainability component in that. So I believe that's a longer journey, and earlier answer I told you like it's a futuristic longer journey where mobile operators today are looking at in-house, what can they do, how can make their house in order, and as they look forward into their more impactful climate journey, I think that behavior change aspect is key.
That's objective 3 in Asri's presentation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's very important. I think, adoption of any digital solution. Again, going back to coverage gap, we've seen that behavior change. Having confidence in the technology. Sometimes when you talk about adopting the mobile internet, there may be social barriers. There may also be, a feeling that I don't know how to use this, and what if I break it? So I think this is an important one. It takes time to actually get past this challenge. So thanks for that. I will go back to Daniel here, and we've touched upon the theme of collaboration many times. So if you can give us an example of a partnership or collaboration that DTC has undertaken, it could be in energy, waste management, natural resource management, any other sector.
Yeah. So like I said in the beginning, so DTC in Indonesia very young still. Yeah. So these partnerships are shaping. I guess one example where we have a partnership is with the government. Actually, it's not with the private sector or startups, but it's with the entity in the Indonesian government that is responsible for supporting the digital entrepreneurship ecosystem. Yeah? So, and our activities, we essentially basically backpack onto their reach already. They have the ecosystem in Indonesia is already so far developed. There's no sense in putting something new next to it. Yeah. So you have to tap into these activities or these structures that are already there, and then it's all about partnering. When it comes to collaborating with partnerships, with startups on the ground, for example, we're just at the very beginning. So I couldn't name a very specific example. We have conversations with many, and I guess in former projects, before the DTC came to Indonesia, there are already plentiful collaborations, and you could ask my colleague Atik maybe later on as well, because she's been with the energy program for a couple of years already, and they've done work with startups already as well. Yeah, so I couldn't name the example. On a global scale, I guess one of the most prominent collaboration examples is with Orange in Africa, where the DTCs and Orange team together to create Orange Digital Centers across the African continent. And these are partnerships models we are looking at, and we are striving for. Yeah. And you cannot do it on your own. It's impossible. The job is big, like you said earlier. Yeah, it's a global issue. Nobody can do this on their own.
Yeah, agree. I think we're almost out of time here, so I'll close with two quick questions now. Andy, can you talk about how you measure impact at Bhakti?
Yes, currently we have measured the impacts of our programs, especially for the infrastructure development in terms of the economic and social impacts. But in particular for the climate change issues, frankly speaking, we haven't done yet any measurement. So we open to collaboration to do so if.
Yeah, and it's not an easy problem, right?
Yeah.
To solve. So it's natural to not yet have your strategy in place, but I'm sure hopefully we'll get there soon, at least with the strategy. The last one for you. Can you share an example of future potential technology solutions that could address climate change issues?
Okay, so looking at future, I would say one of the things I'm very excited about is where we have this working relationship with the DTC and also few of the government agencies in Indonesia, including Bhakti. And we are looking forward to setting up these solutions on 3 areas, right? So on renewable energy solutions that also could lead into other innovations. So we are looking at something like how can we predict or forecast the amount of solar power that can be generated on rooftops, right? Something like that, which we are partnering. And on the other side, looking at how can we use data for waste management, more efficient waste management, where that's a major challenge on managing on waste, right? And then the third side, we are also looking at things like shrimp farming or mangrove conservation, and how can we use technology. I think you will hear more on what Ericsson is doing very soon as well. And then I think I'll leave it open so that the other sessions can also enlighten on the future track.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll turn to the audience for your questions now. I mean, we have about 9 minutes for audience questions. So if you have questions, please ask them. Otherwise, I will think up a few more, and you'll have to listen to me drone on. Yeah, please. So please state your name and organization, and if you can identify the panelist it is directed to.
We have a mic coming, yes.
Mic, please, yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I mean, I'm Hassan from Bhakti, and I'm from Division of Digital Literacy. Yeah, and I have to agree about the digital literacy is something that very important things to do, because we need to talk about the people readiness to accept the technology and the telecommunication system, and that's the important things that we need to approach more and more now. And what I ask is just like I need some point of Mr. Dulip or Mr. Daniel about Indonesia have many islands that have many culture there, and people is very hard to accept something new. It's like yesterday they just try to learn about the telecommunication system, and now we have to in again with climate things. And how do you think about the importance of these people readiness? Thank you.
So I think one of you maybe it's.
Yeah, we want to take.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, I think very, very relevant topic. And as I mentioned earlier on the shrimp farmers example, it is a hard challenge, right? And it is something of a journey. And I would feel it's more of the key way to go about it from other examples and even examples from other countries as well is to understand the community and how they go about it, what kind of challenges they have, and look at that micro or nano ecosystem, address their barriers or challenges and how technology can fit in. So a good example would be last year, GSMA did a report, not in Indonesia, but in Kenya, on participatory forest management and how digital tech can support. So these are foresters or tree planters in Kenya that go into the deep rural areas of Kenya for tree reforesting, right? And how can digital tech be used to support these tree planters? Again, we had to interview more than 300 tree planters, understand from their perspective how they view digital tech, how they view these opportunities, and then support. So it's purely an inclusive approach that we need to go, and an ecosystem approach, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Anything to add? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it very much depends on the approach you take. Yeah, so we highly believe in doing this in a human-centered design approach, where you talk to the people, include the people, and have a conversation with them, and figure out what are the triggers that actually motivate them. How do I create intrinsic motivation? And that might not be the direct use case you want to implement. Yeah, you might go through a different use case and start introducing digital technologies in a very different field, but where it's beneficial, so you can understand the benefit, and then also adapt it to a different use case that you are actually targeting. So what approach to take in the end is, I guess, very dependent on the region and on the given situation. Yeah. And in Indonesia, like you said, it's going to be a very diverse approach. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, we have two more.
Hi, yeah, thank you, gentlemen. I'm Valerie from ASEAN Innovation Business Platform. I have a question, actually, two parts to my question regarding more of the outcomes in terms of, since we're on the topic of climate change, right? So number one is the metrics that you're looking at in terms of climate. So like you mentioned, you have a lot of digital innovations, and you're looking at the outcomes and the implications and how it actually will resolve, in a sense, or alleviate climate change. I'm just wondering what kind of metrics you're looking at, the direct metrics, the indirect metrics. So for example, you mentioned this fishermen. So indirectly, it would be how it supports the fishermen, but directly would be, for example, in terms of temperature change, in terms of rainfall, droughts, and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, from your opinion, what are the kind of metrics that you're looking at? And, you know, is that specific to region, specific to country, for example, Indonesia? And then the second part of my question would be in terms of digital innovation, how do you actually measure the returns or the impacts that digital innovation has on climate change? So for example, before and after implementation, how do you see the results from this kind of implementation of digital technologies? I think for the whole panel, if you may.
Anyone wants to take it, or
you can go ahead. It's complex.
I think it's more to
all I can say is, yeah, all I can say is I'm glad I'm on this chair. That's a tough one.
Love the question, love it, and that's exactly on topic, exactly on the challenge. We have a measurement challenge, right? A challenge where innovators like yourself in the audience can help us, right? Because how can we measure the impact of climate change? Mainly keeping in mind it's a long journey, right? So it's not something we will have results next year, right? And we work in an industry which looks at quarter-to-quarter results and how we make quarter-to-quarter. We can't do it that way. It's a long journey. So it's very important, as you've highlighted very rightly, looking at the baseline to understand what emissions we have, what challenges we have, what kind of resource pool we have at the moment, map it out, and then map out what changes happen. So I would say on 3 levels. For first of all, looking at direct impact level. So who are the direct beneficiaries and what impacts they have, and start to look at the outcomes, right? And then the outputs, and finally the impact of overall change. So what we are trying to do, this is an attempt, is to map this out on a kind of time scale to understand, okay, what would be the direct benefit for the farmers or the users, right, immediately, but on the longer term, medium term, what would be their change, and how can we measure that against the baseline. There are some indicators like the ICF indicators that have come up, which are useful for us to start understanding this, but I would feel it's a collaborative journey where we would like to work with you guys and to map it out accordingly.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add something?
Yeah, I'm not going to completely parrot what Dulip said just regarding direct indicators. So for me, it's a bit easier because we are commissioned by the German government. So our goals regarding this are basically the goals of Indonesia in this regards. Yeah, so that's rather easy. And the complicated answer is how do we measure it? It's an amazingly complex task, and we can do it on a small scale, but how do you scale these measurements up is really complicated.
Yeah, maybe just to add one thing, I would feel very happy because in the region we have so many similar challenges as well, right? So I'm glad we have operators from Philippines attending here. So some of the challenges on mangroves can be like cut and paste there, right? On the social side, of course, learnings have to be implemented there. However, on the climate challenges we face, there are similarities. So again, the learning would be a journey when we look at the region across Asia Pacific.
Yeah, thank you. But I think we have one more question. So that two.
Okay.
We're really short on time.
Already
So
has the microphone in.
let's quickly let's keep the questions short, please.
Okay.
You'll be the last one.
All right. Hello, my name is Ramon. I work for a startup who helps mobile operators reduce their electricity use. And what I like about this panel is, I think, if I understand it correctly, is how can mobile operators help society use less electricity? But Mr. Hassan, in his address, indicated that the first objective for his company is to reduce their own carbon footprint. So I'm not sure, Dulip, I think the question is for you, but I'm not sure if it fits with what you do. But so first of all, how big is actually the footprint of a mobile operator? I have no idea. And secondly, can you give some examples how mobile operators are trying to reduce their footprint? Because I haven't heard anything specific from you. But again, I'm not sure if it fits with this panel.
Well, in short, I would say there are operator colleagues, including Asri here, which they will be able to give you a list of activities that they already do. So I would say very shortly answering that would be to map out their scope 1, 2, and 3. I can see the operators nodding, so I'm on track, right? So basically to look at what they control, first of all, then look at what they purchase, and then on the third parties and suppliers that provide them with services, and how can we control that, right? So those would be the 3 tracks that they would work on, and on each of these tracks they would have initiatives, right? On what they control, how can they reduce generators and diesel, on what they purchase, how much they map the impact and control those where possible by using renewable solutions or hybrid solutions. On the suppliers, it's a management of suppliers basically.
Right. I'm going to have to ask you to stop there.
Sure.
Is your question a really short one? Otherwise, we're yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. So perhaps for Andy, my name is Neil. I represent a startup called Data Culture. So while we're talking about climate resilience, and it's super critical right now, what we also see is the fact that there are millions out there who are unable to use internet. So one is technology and reaching, taking the internet connectivity there. But do you see device affordability as a challenge? If yes, what are the solutions that you're kind of looking for?
Device affordability.
Correct. So to use internet, you will need a smartphone or a smartphone. So
okay. Yes. Like I have mentioned earlier that we have many challenges, not only for the infrastructure development, but also the digital literacy, including the ownership of the smart device by the people. So yes, that's a challenge. That what we do right now is we are in cooperation with the telco operators. So once we have built the infrastructure, the one who will utilize our infrastructure is the telco operators. In this case, it's the mobile operators, including from the XL Axiata, we have operation also with them. So the one who will penetrate with the device is the mobile operators. So I think we have already strategy in place to what they call it, to sell the device that affordable to the people. So yes, that's the strategy that we have been doing right now.
Thank you. I think we have to stop there. Tomorrow we'll be having at the Policy Leaders Forum a little bit of a discussion on this aspect as well. So please feel free to join us. It'll be in this room, 11:30. Yeah. Okay. I think at this point, let's just wrap the panel up. We're already 4 minutes over time, and we started a bit late, so we're well over time for the session. I'd like to just thank you all for coming, and thank you especially for traveling over here and coming and sharing your thoughts. A very important topic, and we'll look forward to actually continuing the discussion. This is not hopefully just a panel discussion and be done with it. Hopefully this is going to create some calls to actions as well. Yeah. Yep. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. We have one more panel fireside chat now, and I'd like to invite Ellen. Sorry, in the back. Yeah. Sorry, we still have another fireside chat. So let me please invite Ellen. Ellen, will you come on? Yeah. Ellen Alaria is the Manager of Sustainability and Corporate Responsibility for Ericsson in Southeast Asia, Oceania, and India for Ericsson. And Tariq Hassan, Head of Digital Transformation Center, Vietnam. So we heard from Daniel for Indonesia. Tariq will talk about Vietnam. He's at JSR as well. I will quickly start that off, given we are running short on time. So Ellen, maybe we start with you. Can you give us a very short 1-minute introduction to Ericsson and share your climate initiatives?
Yeah, so I think this morning we started off by talking about the net zero ambition, and so I should mention that last year Ericsson made the commitment to be net zero in its emissions by 2030, and then net zero across all of the supply chain by 2040. But for today, we'd like to focus on talking about what we have done in natural resource management, particularly our Connected Mangroves initiative, which we started in 2015 in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, we have a IoT solution that has allowed us to see the mangroves have an improvement in their growth rate from 40% to 80%. And then we replicated that initiative in 2017 in the Philippines, where now we are starting to use AI to help to identify bird species and also help the authorities to see if there is any unauthorized people in the area. To the best of our knowledge, we think it's the first of its kind in the world.
That's really interesting, and we hear about mangrove challenges. Yeah. Cutting mangroves or degrading the environment. It's not just a one country problem or a two country problem. So where do you think this would? What are your next 3 priority countries? I might ask you to expand this initiative to.
Yeah, so in Malaysia, to date, we've planted about 4,000 trees, but it doesn't stop there because it's a very long stretch of riverbank that needs to be reforested. So we're working together with our customers to see what other innovations we can introduce to the project, maybe with the use of AI as we have done in the Philippines. And then in the Philippines, we are working together with our partner operator, the Smart Communications, to see how we can launch a second site. And this time the AI will be used to help the authorities to identify whether the trees are in the fruiting or in the flowering stage, so that will give them a cue on when to harvest the seeds. So climate change has really messed up the life cycles of the trees, so they're not really able to tell anymore when it's time to collect that. And at the same time, our market area, Southeast Asia and Oceania, we have countries with some of the longest coastlines in the world. So we are looking at 2 other projects, and these are large-scale projects, but at the moment I won't be able to disclose yet, but maybe later in the year we can make an announcement.
Look forward to that, look forward to that, yeah. And in terms of what you need, like as to implement these sort of projects, right? What do you think is most important? Is it funding? Is it people and partnerships? Or is it technology? Like what is the most important aspect?
Well, for us, it would be partnership. So we typically go in and find out what the community needs and what their aspirations are. And then from there, we build the project. And then that's when we can figure out which partners to bring into the project. So we're always on the lookout for partners, especially in the space of AI and IoT, because we want to have as much as possible partners who are based in the area where we are doing the conservation project. So if they're in the area, then they're better able to make good recommendations for the solution, and then they typically have better relationships with the community and also a sense of ownership because they are from that area.
From that area.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the same time, we're also going beyond that, and now we're trying to help our communities also find partners to fund them in their livelihood programs. Because in Malaysia, for example, the community has started to sustainably harvest fruits from the mangrove trees, and they have turned that into juices. In the Philippines, they've turned that into food products. So we need funding partners. And in the Philippines, for the site that we have in Pampanga, they have a very solid ecotourism plan, but they need a partner who can support them on the tourism aspect. So while these are not going to be direct partners for Ericsson, they're important to ensure that the restoration projects are able to continue and the community can sustain themselves in their livelihood.
Right, thank you. So that's, if I understood that correctly, it's really partnership for the project.
Yes.
Right? It's not just partnership for implementation of the project, but actually to keep the project alive and running and growing.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Tariq, welcome. Can you give us a minute's introduction to the DTC in Vietnam? I mean, we've already heard from Daniel on Indonesia and specifically on climate initiatives there.
Sure. Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you so much for having me. To cut it short, I'm basically Daniel's cousin in Vietnam. So we are the sister project in the Digital Transformation Center. Vietnam, we work together with the Vietnamese Ministry of Planning and Investment, and there mainly with the Vietnam National Innovation Center on green technologies. We are launching our Green Tech Hub in October, which is a platform which brings together academia, industry, government, and the startup space, where we're running multiple startup programs throughout the next year and a half.
So can you contrast us, provide a contrast for us between, let's say, Indonesia and Vietnam? I mean, are climate challenges specific to countries? How do you see that? Like going back to the video, perhaps, we saw some key findings there. What do you think would be different for Vietnam?
We don't have 17,000 islands, so that's a bit different. What we share are the big coastal lines. So Vietnam is also very vulnerable to climate change, coastal erosion. Agriculture is a key sector in Vietnam. How many of you had coffee today already? Okay, so second biggest exporter of coffee is Vietnam after Brazil. So we're focusing on 4 key areas, being energy, which is similar to Indonesia because it's such a big emitter of CO2 emissions, waste, transport, and agriculture.
Okay, so some similarities, some differences as well. It's good to hear that. And then going back again to the GSMA video, right? You saw that there were 3 barriers, right? Technical infrastructure, political system, and uptake of behavior change, right? Which is the one you would pick as the one you've really encountered the most in your project so far?
I mean, we've encountered all of those challenges to some degree, but I think the most pressing one would be connectivity. So in the mangroves, it's typically located in rural areas, and it's understandable that there's not always good connectivity there. But when we get to that scale where we are using hundreds of thousands of sensors to monitor acres and acres of mangroves, then we would definitely need good connectivity and perhaps 5G connectivity somewhere along the line. And at the same time, the community needs access to connectivity and also devices, because typically we build in digital tools like an online dashboard that they can use to monitor the state of the mangroves. But if they don't have the connectivity and devices, then of course that's going to be very of limited use to them. But in Malaysia right now, the most pressing concern of the community that we work there is that they're all elderly, and they're worried that after they pass on, there's not going to be any from the younger generation who would want to continue the work of taking care of the mangroves. So we need to, when doing these projects, make sure that we are building in incentives for the youth to come and stay and take care of their mangroves. At the same time, we also think there should be stronger legislation around protecting these areas. In the Philippines, the project that we have done with them, they said, the local community said that it has helped them to make, to pass the legislation ensuring that it would be protected forever. So that will be a protected wetland, and then it has also been named as the 8th Ramsar site of the Philippines, meaning it's a wetland of international importance. So we need to ensure that the mangroves that we plant today won't be cut down in 50 or 100 years from now, because then it will all be for nothing, right?
Sure, yeah. And Tariq, in changing gears a little bit, we've talked about adoption, we've talked about technology. When you look at projects in Vietnam, do you see frontier tech, so applications of AI, let's say, or do you see solutions that are more practicably, adoptable, if that's the word, but like, let's say 2G, basic services which seem to work, or do you think you really do need the advanced tech for climate solutions?
What was mentioned in the report, starting with the humans, right? Human-centered design, that's actually my background as well. So even though I'm the head of the Digital Transformation Center, the first question I would always ask is, do we really need that? And who said that we need that? So being in touch with the end users, being in touch with the beneficiaries and figuring out what are their capabilities is key. I think we in the tech community are always very keen to talk about leapfrogging and about fancy tech, and you want drones in the air and AI dashboards. I read one feasibility study on agriculture and mobile. And has anybody lived in Vietnam or is from Vietnam here in the room? No, so if you live in Vietnam, I get about 2 or 3 scam calls every day. So what they found out in this testing that they did with local farmers in Vietnam is that a lot of the people, when it was about IVR, so interactive voice response, they would hang up because they would think it's a scam call. So rather than assume, yes, we need this technology, it's about finding the right technology for the right people. So there, in the study, actually, it showed that there was very little uptake on low-tech solutions. They said, of course, it was very promising that that high-tech agri-tech solutions are to be deployed, but then there are other considerations, such as informing farmers. So you have to increase the capacity of the farmers, about data packages for the farmers, and also hardware and hardware maintenance that is connected to having IoT devices. So I think the answers is always complex, but I think the key is making sure that the right capacities are in place before you start any programming or application of technology.
Yeah, actually, that's really interesting. Maybe you can talk a little bit more, take that a step further about building capacities. Can you share an example of something that's worked, or even something that's not worked, and that has some key lessons in there?
So we exist since October last year. So we are also launching our first program actually in October with the Green Tech Hub. Our role in that ecosystem will be talking about monitoring and evaluation and indicators, which is such an interesting question. For us, the first layer is evaluating our programs. How are the incubators, accelerators, landing pads that we run, and does that actually benefit the startups? And then the second layer will be figuring out how do we engage them in making sure that they reach, that they measure what they do. Sorry, actually, I lost track of the original question.
So the question was about capacity building.
Right. So when we work on capacity building, we want to make sure that the beneficiaries that we work with, which are mainly startups, have the right tools in hand to make good business. Because usually what we see is you have these two communities. You have the climate community and you have the tech community. I would actually be keen to figure out, by raising of hands, it's fireside chat, so I hope it's okay that we move.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who of you identifies more as being part of the climate community? Okay, and who feels like they're more part of the tech community? And who identifies as both to equal parts? Okay, interesting. So the last one, a really rare breed we find in Vietnam. So you either have the techies who then approach us and they want to do good, but they don't really, they talk about sustainability and that's a big buzzword, but they don't really understand the green tech space. And then we have the climate people who sometimes, not all the time, are a bit skeptical when it comes to technologies. So a big part of our work is trying to create that partnership that these two groups talk together. And we don't have the techies who think that the climate people are backwards and conservative. And that is a big part of capacity building, understanding that both groups understand each other, that you have business owners who understand I don't need to increase only my profit margin, but also my impact and measuring that impact. And we have the climate people talk about nature-based solutions and all these great approaches, but then there's no business case behind it. So really bringing together sustainability and the feasibility will be a core in our capacity building.
Thank you. And if you were to pick, let's say, 3 topics on which you want to work at your DTC, what would they be?
Mm-hmm. So in the Green Tech Hub, we focus on 3 key sectors and then one overarching theme, being agriculture, transport, and energy. And then we use circular economy as an overarching theme around it. We had one case, for example, where we looked into reuse models, so trying to minimize plastic waste by having, use these things you use in your kitchen, right, detergent and such, that there's a throwaway item. There are reuse models for that, but what happens if you have a motorbike that use fuel to then deliver these packages to you, right? So it really needs to be integrated, and these 4 sectors, we want to look at that holistically. But yeah, those are the key areas we see, with, of course, energy being the evergreen, the biggest emitter of CO2. That is really the key sector that also the Vietnamese government is focusing on.
Thank you. So Ellen, we've heard, about collaboration from virtually everyone so far, right? I'd like to ask you how you view collaboration. You're a private sector entity, but when you hear from, let's say, donors or startups or NGOs who want to work with Ericsson, how do you actually view them and how do you evaluate them?
So first, we see how well and how much time they have taken into actually doing a needs assessment of the community that they want to address, because we don't want to come in with a solution and say, okay, here, go and use this, but we want to turn it the other way around and just really try to understand what is the problem we're trying to address. And as Tarek says, do we really need this type of solution? So we evaluate it along those lines, and then we see how well these potential partners will be able to support whatever they are proposing to us. So that's what we look for when we collaborate with different partners. So we typically work with NGOs who have a good track record of working with the communities and putting together livelihood programs and capacity building programs, education programs. We work with the government to make sure we have the right approvals in place and we have their buy-in as well. We work with academia, for example, who typically want to do research on the data that the solution is able to provide. So it's a lot of different actors that need to come together to ensure the success of the project, and everyone has a big role to play.
So anybody who wants to come and work with you at Ericsson, they better have done their homework, yes, and they better have a good track record, right? But then what happens if it's a startup? It's like, gosh, so they could have done the homework, but what if they don't have, what do you think, how do you evaluate a startup that comes to you?
So we have worked with some startups before. I think those are very early days. Ericsson maybe is not the easiest organization to work with when it comes to, let's say, sourcing or purchasing decisions. So we've had to guide them in the process. So we're not discounting them. We're open to working with everyone, but I think we need to have a certain level of maturity in the partners, just to make sure that they're able to really work with us hand in hand through every step of the way.
Okay, thank you. Tarek, barriers to attracting investment. I mean, this is, specific to climate and specific to Vietnam. What do you see as barriers to attracting investment to the country?
So in Vietnam, we don't have we call it the green tech investment landscape. So what we're launching right now is actually a peer group of impact investors where they're being educated on what is different when I invest in a fintech startup or in a gaming startup to when I invest in an energy startup. So that is on a sort of capacity community level. And then we're also looking at regulation because the framework conditions in Vietnam are not very favorable to investments. Fund sizes, for example, are limited to 30 participants. So a lot of the bigger funds will go to Singapore, actually, and that requires also Vietnamese startups to set up shop in Singapore for them to be able to attract investments. And that costs, I think, $1,000 to $2,000 and takes up to a month, if I'm not mistaken. So that is a barrier that we see for Vietnamese startups. Part of it is we will work on the framework conditions with the legislators, but then also we have to start educating investors to work with them and see what is different, what is very specific to these sectors that we want to work on.
In terms of regulation, I mean, do you have a sort of a time scale? How are you actually approaching this? And because this is a problem not just in Vietnam. I mean, I work very closely with Bangladeshi communities, and even there, there's this barrier to sort of attracting investment, taking money out, making the country more investment friendly. But do you have a specific target timeline that you're thinking that, okay, we'll get to here in 2 years? How long does it take you?
I mean, our timeline is as long as the project is running, so we stop 2027 if everything goes right. But yeah, our role also as German development agency is we're not the legislator, right? What we offer is technical support to the Vietnamese government, and we have to follow their lead. I think there are some mechanisms in program design where you can really nudge legislators in the right direction, and I think formats like these conferences and or workshops where you bring together legislators with the beneficiaries. So hearing a startup talk about how difficult it is to set up a shop for them to register their business, right? This is usually where you have the most impact. I did policy design before I started this job in Vietnam, and when you bring together a legislator with a single mom who talks to you about how difficult it was to get maternal health care, that is really what impacts the legislature. Of course, there's the whole political economy above that, but I think it's really important that in these policy discussions that we bring that really to the ground and understanding real human needs, because then we have a sense of urgency.
Okay, thank you. Any last words, Ellen or Tarek? Anything that you would like to add?
I think if we want to really work together to help to mitigate climate change, we can't go wrong with nature conservation and mangroves as well. They're excellent as carbon sequesters, so meaning they can take in carbon into the roots and prevent them from being released into the atmosphere. They're also very good at protecting coastlines. We've seen that in Malaysia. So the community that we work with, they were not flooded when Malaysia had this big flooding incident in December. And at the same time, they also act as marine nurseries, ensuring that there's more fish catch for the community. So we're looking forward to having more collaborations within the industry, because we have shown that since 2015, technology can play a big role in doing this kind of reforestation work.
Okay. All right. Thank you both. Thank you very much. I know we're well over time, so people have been moving on. If you can, I'll take just one more minute maybe to wrap up, but thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to, some housekeeping here. Before we end the session, I want to highlight that the report we've been discussing, that's been setting the context of our discussions today, it's going to be published in September. So please look out for it at the Mobile Innovation Hub. I don't know if the slide's coming on. Is there a slide after this? No? Okay. Then Dulip will help you with the link. Our panelists will be around today and tomorrow, so please do feel free to reach out to them for discussions and more conversations. With that, we're coming to the end of the session, so I would like to thank our speakers, panelists, support staff. Thank you so much for your help. Also, and obviously our funding partner, German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. Tomorrow we'll be hosting another session on mobile and frontier tech for SDGs in Southeast Asia in this room at 10 a.m. I won't have the mic, so you've heard the last from me. If you're going to that session, you'll be listening to Daniele, who's in the back there, and he's the senior director for Central Insights Unit and M&E for us. So look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Please remember to mask up, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.